chapter of One Piece had fighting, so you know I loved it. Non-stop, whole chapter, they were focusing on a lot of really cool action this week, and the momentum never stopped. In fact, it actually opened up with a battle between Luffy and Bellamy, and I love the fact that Bellamy is actually going to be something of a threat in this battle because he can actually use Haki as he's jumping around and bouncing across the walls, and he gets one good hit on Luffy. But let's face it, guys, it's only a matter of time before Gear 2nd gets in there and starts whipping up that Spring Boy's ass. Zoro versus Pika is a fun battle due to the scale of it. There's never really been a battle like this in the series where Pika can literally take control of not only the castle, but the entire mountainside of this massive kingdom. And they do this in a number of cool ways, whether it just be his big creepy face just emerging from the walls, or the fact that he creates a giant stone clone of himself where another clone comes out of its shoulder and tries to punch Zoro, who basically just cleanly cuts him in half. Yeah, it's pretty freaking awesome. And then, of course, you have that one guy who's fighting against Dellinger, who actually has those explosive punches. I didn't expect that guy was going to get any big hit in. But honestly, my favorite thing about this week's chapter involved the character of the massive Elbaf giant, Harudon, who is a character who, when I saw him for the first time in the anime version, I just figured he was just going to be completely dismissed, they were never going to use him again, and he's basically just here to be defeated. But no, he honestly has one of the coolest punches I've seen in the entire series, where he's fighting against one of Don Quixote Doflamingo's family members, Vice, who is basically the big, creepier looking version of Tanuki Mario. At least that's the way he reminds me of. He's the guy who can actually make things like weigh a lot more when he like slams down on top of them. And there's a scene where he's coming right down on top of this giant who punches him at the same time, and it almost seems like he's going to be defeated because you can like see like his armor shattering for a split second. But then he ends up sending Vice flying upwards right into the sharp birdcage, where I'm not even sure if he's going to survive this. And what I really love most about this scene is that basically it's just showing all of the different side characters are helping out Zoro. And as Harudon actually ends up falling over, you see Zoro basically gives him the promise that the minute he wakes up, this bird cage is going to be gone. This is basically Zoro's declaration of war to kick ass. Really, the battle between him and Pika really hasn't even started yet. And I think next to the whole Luffy-Doflamingo confrontation, eventually when it gets to that, that's the one I'm looking forward to seeing the most. I mean, Zoro's honestly always got some of the best fights. I think it's always between Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji at this point. However, there's still the whole Frankie Senor Pink situation, which I think that would be an opportunity to do something really crazy with it, if only just to see more cyborgs and big babies suplexing each other. So, what's the rundown? It was fun. Simple as that. This was just one of those really crazy, ridiculous chapters where it's amazing how this is like just a normal arc of the series, and like its actual scale and the destruction of everything that's happening is almost similar to like the Battle of the Best when they were fighting at Marine headquarters. It's just so overblown and crazy. They're literally fighting in a giant nation which is covered by a giant slicing and dicing birdcage, which is still ridiculous when you really wrap your head around it, but it makes for a really great final battle. The thing with Bellamy that I still think is interesting, you know, they're still holding back on that. That was really only like I think a one-page thing where you just saw him bouncing around and attacking Luffy. Obviously, you know, he's just so disgustingly dedicated to Doflamingo and will do whatever it takes to actually impress him, or at least go out in the blazes of glory in order to represent him. And there's just something really interesting to be said about that. And I actually do really love the artwork at the beginning of the scene, like when he's bouncing around and finally does hit Luffy. I thought that was really cool that he's actually using Haki. Pika, though, he's just such an awesome villain, and so far in the anime version, we haven't, like, heard him yet, and I can't wait to see what his voice is actually going to sound like in the anime version, because there's a lot of scenes this week where Zoro is running away from Pika, and he's commenting on his laughter and how funny it sounds, and how incredibly distracting it is, and so far in the anime version, it's pretty much just still just like the very beginning of Zoro and Pika's confrontation, where he's just emerging from the walls constantly and not saying anything quite yet. I think he doesn't even speak for the first time until the birdcage actually comes up. But still, everything else this week was great. The big attack with the giant at the end was really cool because, like I said, I love that they're bringing back all of those characters that they introduced in Kurita Coliseum and doing something else with them. And I just think that's really cool. Just the fact that they're actually helping out the Straw Hat Pirates. There's also that one dude who's actually like playing bowling with Doflamingo's goons. Like, he's literally, like, throwing them into, like, pins and stuff. It's a really funny and action-packed chapter, which, you know, I wasn't the biggest fan of the One Piece manga. Little by little, I'm really starting to enjoy the artwork side of things and just how ridiculous it is. But again, it just gets me even more excited for the anime version of the show. So, this was a fun chapter. It had a lot of action, and honestly, I really don't have too many complaints with it. I know that seems like I'm maybe being a little too giving, but I just really enjoyed reading this chapter. It was a lot of fun. It had some really great artwork, and the action this week was pretty kick-ass, especially that big punch right at the end. Check it out, guys. Really cool stuff. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's chapter of One Piece in the comments section below. Did you have a favorite action scene from this week's chapter? And what do you want to see from the rest of the Dressrosa arc? Remember, guys, before you leave, make sure and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. You can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You guys can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.